Judy. It's this right here. Okay, the recorder's on and the public is signed in. Okay, we'll call to order the January 27th meeting of the Delray Beach Planning and Zoning Board at 5:01. Ms. Miller.
Is your mic on?
It says it is. Okay. Ms. Miller, if you could call the roll, please.
Mitch Katz,
Here.
Tris Brown, absent. Deidre Strawn, absent. Allison Thomas,
Here.
Jeffrey Meiselman,
Here.
Judy Malika,
Here.
Gregory Snyder.
Here. Okay. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
No one? Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Judy Mulligan, seconded by Allison Thomas.
Mitch Katz,
Yes.
Tris Brown is absent. Deidre Strawn is absent. Allison Thomas,
Yes.
Jeffrey Meiselman,
Yes.
Judy Malika,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes. We have no minutes to approve this time. At this time, I'd like to swear in anyone who wishes to speak at the meeting tonight. Please stand.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. And at this point, we'd take comments from the public on any item that's not on the agenda. If anyone, seeing no one, we have no presentations. We'll move on to the quasi-judicial hearing items, and I will read the quasi-judicial rules. This hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be permitted to present their case. The public should be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The board members, staff, and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine the witness, and the city and the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal testimony. And I must say, the decision to approve or deny an application or appeal may not legally be made upon personal views as to whether the project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the number of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirements of law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. Okay. So if staff would enter the first item.
Grisel Rodriguez, Senior Planner. Entering item 8A, Candy Wonderland, application number 2024-242, a conditional use.
Thank you. And the applicant?
And as the applicant is coming up, do you want to check on ex parte communication?
Oh,
at the
yeah,
board?
thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
No problem.
Any ex parte?
I spoke with the applicant, or the owner.
Okay.
None.
Haven't spoken with anybody. I'm very familiar with the location.
I spoke to a couple of the neighboring business owners, and I visited the plaza this weekend.
I saw the plaza this weekend, spoke to nobody else.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Rebecca Zissel, Sax Kaplan, 6111 Broken Sound Parkway, Northwest Boca Raton, here on behalf of the applicant, Candy Wonderland, for the conditional use application. Oop, sorry. Am I going back? Sorry about that. So the details of the request, this would be conditional use approval to allow children's indoor playground. It's 2,423 square feet. It's in the shops of Delray Shopping Center. For those of you who drove by it or are familiar with it, it's on South Military Trail, just north of Atlantic. The property zone general commercial. Permitted uses obviously there's a variety in general commercial, but the most similar are schools for gymnastics, dancing, karate, and judo would be a permitted use. Under conditional uses are recreational establishments such as bowling alleys, gymnasiums, health spas, miniature golf courses, and skating rinks. Nowhere in the code does it specifically define or the children's play area or something that would directly be on point, but it would fit. It has been determined it would fit within recreational establishments. The difference between it and some similar uses that would be permitted are that it's not a school use, so there aren't classes. So there are sometimes gymnastics places do have open play, but they also have class structure. So that's why this is a conditional use, not a permitted use. General commercial, as some of the uses that would be allowed, you can look at this particular shopping center. It has 2 restaurants, 2 medical offices, 8 personal service or general commercial service, and 1 professional office. For tonight, you're voting on the conditional use. So section 2.4.6A5 of the LDRs require finding that it will not have a significantly detrimental effect upon the stability of the neighborhood in which will be located, and that it will not hinder development or redevelopment of nearby properties. Also, to find that it meets land use map concurrency, consistency, and compliance with the LDRs. The staff report goes into detail on those items. I'm not going to go too much today, but in terms of having a detrimental effect or hindering development and redevelopment, we believe it fits pretty clearly within the other allowed uses and that it meets those quite clearly. The one thing we just wanted to mention is parking. I know it's mentioned in the staff report, and we just wanted to mention it briefly. That was the source of this. The applicant didn't even realize it was not a permitted use. It was an honest mistake and opened, and there was a neighbor that did complain about parking, and that got code enforcement looking into it, and that was when we realized it fell on the other side of the line of permitted versus conditional uses. But as the staff report also says, there is no parking problem here. This site has been around since the 70s, and then it was annexed into the city in the 90s, but it does meet the current requirements for parking. If you look at it today, 100 spaces would be required, and there are 118 spaces. So even if you think about particularly high occupancy days, there's not any issues of concern with parking. Here just are a few photos of, if those of you who haven't been inside and just saw the shopping center, showing the area inside. It's a great indoor play area. I took my daughter there to check it out, and it's a great place for families and a good addition to Delray. So that is all I have. Happy
Thank
to
you.
answer any questions. Oh, sorry, can I just add, the owner is here today if you have any specific questions for the owner. The owners are back there in the row where I was sitting.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And staff?
Okay. Item 8A, Candy Wonderland. As Ms. Zissel said, the property is off of 14406 South Military Trail. The land use is general commercial, and the zoning is general commercial in the property. The request is a conditional use approval to allow a recreational establishment, i.e. a children's indoor playground. The hours that are proposed by the applicant are 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Friday through Sunday. The applicant states no outside uses will be had and no food preparation on the premises. As Ms. Zissel said, these are online photos from Google Business Listing of the interior, which is already built out. The site plan, this is the configuration. Sorry, I couldn't put it face up, but north is west here on this, and it's in the corner of the shopping plaza, and it takes over a rather large space. There are 2 other establishments to the west of it. The LDR findings that need to be made is that this will not have a significantly detrimental effect upon the neighborhood or the area, and that it will not hinder development or redevelopment of nearby properties. The shopping center ratio is 4 spaces per 1,000 irrespective of uses pursuant to the land development regulation, and there are 14 tenants. The table provided is 100 spaces, and the parking provided on the site is 118 spaces. So the plaza has 18 spaces of excess parking. We did not make a determination of whether that's enough parking, too much, or too little for this use. That's up to the board to determine that.
I'm sorry, repeat that? What did you just say?
Ms. Zissel said that we found no problem with parking. We don't have a problem or do have a problem. We just give you the facts of what there is. It's up for you guys. It's your prerogative.
Thank you.
Whether or not we have a problem.
The land use is GC, and the general commercial is the preferred implementing district. As you can see from this aerial, to the north and the south is commercial property. To the east is the girls' agricultural area, and to the west is a multifamily development across Military Trail. Required findings of concurrency. The only thing, it's a built site. It's inhabited by an old space. It's reoccupying a space in an existing shopping center. So traffic is the only issue here, and the traffic performance standards letter said that there was no impact because it will not generate additional trips. The findings for the comprehensive plan is that it supports business, diversification of business interests. It promotes new activities, new ownership, and new employment opportunities, essentially. The compliance with the LDR, as we've said, there are no regulations specifically governing recreational establishments. The applicant will be required to obtain permits for after-the-fact approval of the interior alteration, and the fire department will review and approve as part of the building permit process for all of the things that are built in already.
Ask you a question on that, where you just said,
Yes.
is that, so you're saying there was no building permit for it?
No. So the applicant, that's why the applicant's here today, to get approval for this and then to go through the process to legalize it.
As a point of clarification or additional information, building and fire department reviewers did review the plan and the configuration for life safety, whether there's adequate ingress and egress, but the actual approval of any modifications will come through the building permit process, and that's something typically you wouldn't apply for your building permit until you had zoning approval, so it's not it's not in conflict with the typical process. It's just maybe a little different because the applicant is already operating.
Right, but the question is, they opened without not only the zoning, but they did the construction work without any permits.
Ms. Zissel will have to clarify what was actually done. I don't know that construction was
Okay.
actually done, but
wanna
we
get
can
your comment.
get to that.
Okay.
So these are the options for board action. Approval, continue subject to conditions, or denial that does not meet the land use regulations or the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any rebuttal or cross-examination?
So we public comment first.
Should we? Yeah, let's do public comment first. And any public comment? Seeing none, does the applicant
Oh, hi.
have any rebuttal or
Yeah.
cross-examination?
Hi, Rebecca Zissel again. First on the building permit, there was no structural work that required building permit, so there was no building permit required.
We were requesting the building permit review just because, as you can see from the images, I mean, it's a beautiful place, obviously, but then the building permit review And the fire inspection would just be to make sure that these are all fire safe, and the actual materials themselves, if they're secured in a way that protects the life, safety, and welfare of the children of Delray. So it's not that there was a interior build out. It's just to confirm that everything is in place and safe.
Okay.
Right, I just wanted to, and thank you for clarifying that, and I just wanted to clarify that there wasn't major structural work done without building permits that would need, if that's what you were getting at with the questioning.
Okay. Thank you. And
And then Michael Weiner is here as well.
yeah, any
If you're
further?
asking for the record.
Have you
Michael
been
Weiner,
sworn in,
Sax,
Mr.
Sax.
Weiner?
Yes, I was.
He was sworn in.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sax, Sax.
Yeah, what?
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. I see from some of the responses from some of the board members, I have to make some items on. I have put some items on the record, in case you are going down a certain road. First of all, one member was not here when Rebecca made her presentation. So if anyone is thinking about denying this, I would request that we postpone it so that we have an opportunity to present in front of all members. I just have to put it on the record. It's a necessity. I really don't want to make this into tremendously a technical problem or difficulty or anything else. This is a gentleman who has come before you because of a conditional use that separates judo studios from gymnasiums. I mean, it's the tiniest, talk about wordsmithing, this is the tiniest of the tiny. The other thing that I want to say is, yes, there was a BTR issued, a business tax receipt. He didn't hide, he didn't try to avoid. He's in the business of supplying a service to young children. So he did get a business tax receipt, and then all of a sudden everything started to cave in and they found out that something else was required. You are sitting as a planning and zoning board. Whatever might happen with respect to putting some hammers on some walls and doing some things, code enforcement takes care of. Your charge is to see, and I don't mean this as a lecture because I do get it, you are all citizens of this city and you want what's best for this town and you're trying to get the best. But you are to look at the conditional uses and the requirements that are under that particular code, which we've been through and for which there may be some reluctance to say that we're in support of it, but none of the staff says we didn't need it. The other point that I want to make is two things. One, this is a low traffic generator. Permitted uses give high traffic generators. If you think you are saving this section of the town, which is not part of the conditional uses, or you're saving this shopping center, you are not going to get to a position where this is forced to be empty. Probably the best solution is a low traffic generator, as opposed to maybe a restaurant or a gun shop or other things that might have much more traffic impact. The other thing is technically, all of the benchmarks are hit. 118 spaces, not non-conforming, 18 spaces more than are required, knowing it's general commercial. That's met. Staff and traffic reports, all spot on the money, saying it won't impact the area. I've got a small businessman, and pardon me for coming up and taking the microphone, but I feel strongly about someone who's trying to make a difference. And I was hoping that you'll see the simple fact that we've met the positions in the code. It's all about wordsmithing, and there probably isn't a better solution for the shopping plaza. So we're here to answer any additional questions, and we appreciate all the time and effort you spend as citizens here on your board. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask you something. If this becomes contentious, would you be willing to just represent it with Mr. Strawn here?
That's a pretty difficult look. I want to be as cooperative as possible. The last thing I want is a legal battle out of this particular very minute situation. Let's see where the conversation goes. I'm sorry that I'm trying to reserve rights, but I'm supposed to be a lawyer too. So I'm trying my hardest. Ask me that question after we have the discussions, and I'll try to be as cooperative as I can without
Okay.
jeopardizing my client's business. Thank you.
Kelly, any comments?
He can put that on the record. I think that Diedrich has every ability to ask all of the questions that he wants, and if he needs more explanation of their presentation and he can ask those questions and he feels like he can make that decision, I think you're in a place that you guys can make a decision as a board. Just make sure that you're asking for the information that you need to make it.
I guess my concern is,
Michael.
my concern is when it was placed on the record, correct me if I'm wrong, but the statement was, in the event that you all deny this, I'm putting this on the record, and then we can, postpone it. So what happens in the event that I vote in favor and it passes? Does it not stay on the record? Then it sounds like you want to have your cake and eat it too here.
It's not a matter of eating the cake. The practical matter is maybe we might have, and this is what gets so difficult, Mr. Strawn. There's case law and presentations to partial boards. If I don't say it and I don't preserve the record, then I might lose an advantage for my client if he's denied. So I had to take a choice, and the choice was to put it on the record. If you pass it, I don't think you're going to appeal it to the city commission, or attempt to appeal it to the city commission, or attempt to appeal it anywhere. I'm not going to. So as a practical matter, we know that all of those due process issues go away if, in fact, you're in favor of this particular situation. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult where you sit. It's also pretty difficult here. On one hand, I could be criticized later for saying, you know what, you didn't make a comment about it. On the other hand, I realize you sit as citizen members, appointed officials, and I really do not want anything to get in the way of your making a decision just required by what is the case law. Is that enough? I'm taking a lot of time.
I think Rebecca might have had something to say in rebuttal
Yeah.
and cross-examination as well. Thank
All
you,
right.
Mr. Reiner.
Please.
Hi, we had hidden these slides initially because we aren't really here to litigate whether or not the client submitted the right request for paperwork. They're here now, and we have the opportunity to determine if the use is appropriate. But there were 3 zoning certificates of use submitted May 17th, June something of 2023, and then later that year. And they're all really hard to read on here, but I just wanted to say the point being that they had initially submitted as retail, and we don't know whether this was inadvertent or intentional. I think that's not the point. The point is that they're here now. They did attempt to follow the right process by getting their zoning certificate of use, which is the zoning approval for a permitted use. So they did try to come in. We did make the approval for a retail use, though. It was only when the parking complaint came in that we discovered that it was actually more of this recreational use. So that's just a clarification and some additional information on the applicant's attempt to do things the right way.
Thank
And-
you.
Sorry, I would just, to piggyback on what Rebecca had said with her hiding the slides, as the board here, your determination is, would they get this conditional use if they came to you, no matter what, if they came ahead of time, if they came after the fact, your job is to make the decision, is the conditional use appropriate? Code enforcement deals with all the other stuff, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else from the applicant or the staff, how about the board comments? Ms. Malika.
Well, first of all, I think it's an adorable place based on the picture. The reviews are amazing that I'm seeing online. And I almost want to have a baby so I can take it there. But I think that they have met all of the conditions. If they had come a couple months ago, whenever when we first started, we would have said, yeah, because we want to be good to businesses, not make it difficult for them. And I'm sorry that they've had to go through all this sort of after the fact, but I don't think they knew. But I'm not a judge anyway. But based on everything I've heard and know, I would absolutely be in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Strawn, anything else?
No.
Okay. Ms. Thomas?
It is adorable. I don't know because we didn't have the option to see it a couple months before. So I don't know how I would have felt a couple months before, whether or not it would be the same situation, although respectfully, I think that you are absolutely correct and we're pro-business and we're pro-community here. And so it is good. However, I think fairly speaking, would those couple months have made a difference? I don't know.
I think just to make a small clarification, the couple months, if you're saying as far as whether they had approval and started or whether they are coming here for approval, that should not make a difference in your review. The question you're being asked is related to the conditional use. Will it not have a significantly detrimental effect on the stability of the neighborhood within which it will be located, or hinder development or redevelopment of nearby properties? So that's the question that you're being asked today, whether they had approval before or after. So
Okay.
thank
That's
you.
all for me.
Okay. Mr. Katz?
I have a couple questions. One about, let me turn this off.
Uh-oh.
Is there a password or something to this? It turned off, I'm saying. But question about this 118 parking and not being parking or being overparked. So I've been in that plaza often. I live, I don't know, a mile and a half from there. So this is a plaza with a Chinese restaurant that's very busy. There's a liquor store. I would say that's probably a lower use. There's not as many people going to be coming in and out. But there's a bar restaurant also literally right next door with a high use, a lot of traffic, a lot of cars. There's also a gun shop. I don't think the gun shop has as many. Also, we think of, so my question is that 118 is based on just square footage, no matter what general commercial, then we have to think of is make sure I'm right understanding. If we have to look at the other uses in there, is that enough parking, right, based on the uses as well, especially to allow conditional use? And I will tell you, I don't think there is excessive parking currently, even before they opened, in there between the Chinese restaurant. You also get people, it's right next to the Boys, got to take in consideration, and talk about traffic. That is probably, I can't say it is or it isn't, but just in my I'm not a traffic officer, but I will tell you that is a very dangerous traveling part of Military Trail due to the traffic that the Boys is there. And that's, I don't think anybody could dispute that. It's, you're taking your life in your hands going into the Boys. You're taking your life. I mean, I drive north from Atlantic at least 3 or 4 times a week. I always make sure I'm in the very left lane near that plaza to avoid the people coming in and out and backwards, forwards, and people are parking as well and walking over to the Boys. So you have, well, yes, it's not their parking, it's happening. And I think they do try to, police some of that, but it's not easy. And then does it fit? We're looking at conditional use, like you said, it's for the community. You have a liquor store, you have a bar, you have a gun shop, you have a massage parlor that I would say is questionable. You have, then you have, other offices like attorneys in there. There's a bird shop, that aren't going to be as high traffic. But the bar and the Chinese restaurant, and they happen to be on that. The plaza, is a long plaza. They happen to be all on that same side too. So I think if it was, say, it was more towards where the bird shop, that might make more sense. It would help with the traffic. But for someone to say that there was a comment by one of the attorneys, maybe we can ask, I think it was Mr. Weiner or the other attorney, was he said that the quote was that it was a low volume traffic or low volume, use as far as people coming in and out. How many kids can it accommodate at a time?
The total would be 40 at any time, and We do have the details of the trip generation. It is a low, but we do have from our traffic. There it is, I don't have the exact number in front of me. I'm happy to look it up. 21 peak hour trips. And I would just add just to clarify, and I don't want to step on staff's toes if they were planning to clarify answer your questions, but the ratio is by square footage because it's a shopping center, and that's how. So, for example, the way I would describe it is if you were coming in and getting this, we don't need any sort of waiver for parking. We don't need any sort of in lieu parking. We don't need any sort of special treatment on parking. The property is considered parked based on the code, even though this is a existing facility that was built before the current iteration of the code, before it was even part of the city of Delray Beach. If you look today at the shopping center, and if you were building the shopping center today with this size it is, you would need to make sure you had 100 spaces. It currently has 118 spaces. So that's just a statement on what parking would be required under the code. And that's what when I spoke earlier, when I said no issues, I wasn't like a value judgment. It was just a neutral, factual statement. This meets the code for parking. So unless you're talking about converting this to an open space that is going to have 0 uses, you could easily, without parking issues, put another restaurant or bar in this spot because those are permitted uses, and you would not need to come to this board for approval. If someone wanted to put another restaurant in that use, if they wanted to put, as long as it was on that list in general commercial, they would not need to get any sort of special approval. So someone could have taken this bay and put a restaurant on it and generated much more traffic. And I think that's what my colleague, Mr.
compared to
Weiner,
a
meant when he
restaurant.
said it's a low use. It's
Right.
it's a lower use than certain other types that would be allowed by right.
Like if it was another law firm, this would be more traffic, right?
I don't know how much traffic is in a law firm in general. I'm not a traffic engineer either. I just was trying to clarify that what we meant by low volume use was as compared to what you could put by right in this bay. So that's all we meant was there are other uses. This is general commercial. It has a variety of uses allowed, some of which are in this shopping center, some of which we think generate more traffic. So that's all we meant by that, a neutral statement that it meets 2 things. It meets the code on parking. We're not asking for any waiver, and 2, that there are other uses that would be permitted by right that would generate more parking.
Yeah, and a point of clarification, it's not a bar located in there, it's approved as a restaurant, one of the businesses. And then secondarily, the applicant was kind enough to provide us a chart, a what-if scenario of all the current uses and the amount of parking they would generate if they didn't use the shopping center rate, if they used the rate for that use. And either way, it shakes out, they would be required to have 113 with the current use mix at the rates. So either way, it would be on paper compliant with the parking requirements.
That's all the questions I have.
Have you received the answer you
Waiting
with
to
enough
hear.
information? All right. We have more on traffic or parking if you need it. Thank you.
I have a question on the drop-offs. Do the parents or an adult need to stay with the children, or can they drop them off and come back?
You have to come up.
And you're sworn in?
Yes. Introduce yourself, say who you are.
First off, thank you all for coming out. I'm Randy Williams. My wife and I are the owners. And we wanted to open up a kids' little indoor playground. We have young kids ourselves. Our son's back there. But there really, there's been a lack of kid type.
It's all right. You've been asked a question.
Oh, okay.
And so
Sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting into.
you
The parents do have to stay there and watch the kids.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
I don't really have a lot of questions. I'm kind of really not concerned about the number of parking spaces. I've always been able to park. I was wondering about staying open till 9 o'clock at night. That seems like a late hour, especially on Sunday night for kids. I'd be interested to know what your experiences is with how much business you get between 7 and 9 on the weekends in the evening.
Yeah, so sometimes the parents work during the week or even the weekend. So they typically come after 5, 6 o'clock, or they'll get dinner beforehand, and then they want to come bring their kids so they can run around and just have a good time.
You know, this is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? It's open later.
Yeah. So only Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're open until 9 o'clock.
That's what I'm thinking is between 7 and 9. Is that an important hours of your business?
We're not as busy then. We typically like to. It's pretty standard. A lot of the kids' places stay open until that time because after they go for dinner, or if some people, if they're getting off from work, they want to go there to let the kids have some fun.
All right, thank you. I really don't have anything else. Can we get a motion one way or the other?
I would move to recommend an approval to the City Commission of conditional use request for Candy Wonderland LLC to allow a recreational establishment, children's indoor playground, at the property located at 14406 South Military Trail, finding that the request is consistent with the land development regulation and comprehensive plan.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Jeff, was that you?
Yeah.
Motion by Ms. Malika, second by Mr. Mieselman. And Ms. Miller, if you would call a roll, please.
Mitch Katz,
No.
Chris
Respectfully.
Brown is absent. Deidre Strong,
Yes.
Allison Thomas,
Yes.
Jeffrey Meiselman,
Yes.
Judy Malika,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
thank you. And good luck. Beats the shit out of the gambling arcade that used to be in that
No, the
space.
gambling arcade was, they
Well, that's not a bad little place. Stuck with what you got up there. And if we could enter the next item into the record, please?
Thank you. For the record, I'd like to enter file number 2023-159, and I am Alexia Howell, Senior Planner, and the applicant is here today to present.
And
John
before
Tice.
the applicant starts, do you want to?
Yeah, we'll have ex parte, please.
I drove by the site.
Thank you. No? Awesome.
No.
I
don't
have,
know the site, but
I've visited the site.
none.
No.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. Thanks for having us. My name is John Tice. I'm an architect with GHA Architects, and we're delighted to be here to talk to you about our project, which is a 20,000 square foot, 20,200 square foot office warehouse project on the site. As you can see, you know the site, which is surrounded. Let me start at the beginning here. There we go. There's a little, oh, went the wrong way. Sorry. Delray Industrial Properties, LLC, 905 Southwest 14th Avenue. So we've been working on this project for a while, and you know the location. There's a survey. So we have a unique situation where we're set between residential to the east and to the north, and industrial and self-storage to the west. Between 10th and 8th and 13th and 14th. There is an existing building that's on the site. You can see it on the left side of the screen there, which is the home of Rapid Response, which is an office type warehouse project. and it has it's been there quite a while. We're looking to develop the vacant portion of the site, and there's the vacant portion there. We will be looking for a variance and 3 waivers for the project. Right now, the first waiver is the relief from the overhead doors, which are facing the right-of-ways. The existing building does have 3 overhead doors facing each the east and the west right-of-ways. And because of the nature of the site and the way the driveway is set up, really the only way to develop the property is in a similar fashion. There's not a lot of land left over, so we're really connecting the driveways. I'll go to the site plan here. So there's the existing building to the left, the new building to the right. It has existing entrances, which we're maintaining on the south side. Maintaining it's a similar function, similar use. So we also have some new overhead doors on the east and the west facing the right-of-ways. That's one of the waivers. The other waiver is a relief from the minimum required bay areas. The intention of this project is to have smaller bays for smaller startup type businesses, so we don't have these over 4,000 square foot bays. We have a variety of bay sizes that range, I think, from 1,500 to 4,000 square feet. So this is the type setup. There are 10 bays in the project, and we think this will be beneficial to get smaller startup businesses to activate the space. The other waiver we are looking for is a relief from the 5-foot required landscape, and that only occurs on the east side across from the existing building. And an important factor there is that we have a 5-foot right-of-way dedication that we're giving back to the city. So in that particular area, just east of the existing building, the parking spaces, the landscape area is just shy of the 5-foot. So that's where we're looking for the waiver, just in that little area. Does this have a pointer on it? No, I guess not. That's okay.
You'd use the mouse, I think.
Okay. Okay, other than that, it's a pretty straightforward project. We're trying to blend in the type building. The existing building has this blue metal color, as you can see, so we're kind of working with the blue metal color. We did change up a little bit on the new building by adding some stonework along the base to try to dress it up a little bit. So we're trying to do something attractive and appropriate for the neighborhood. And the last item is the variance, which has to do with the minimum 25% non-vehicular open space. We had to balance the needs of the project. We met the landscape code. We met all of the setbacks, and in order to accommodate the numbers of parking that we need, we're 1.1% shy of the 25% open space. So we're just shy of that. We couldn't get any closer. We pared it down as much as we could. But the reason for that is so that we'd have enough parking spaces for the project. Because a project like this is a job generator, the more parking spaces, the more employees that we could have on the site. And so we'd have to remove 7 parking spaces in order to meet the 25%, which would have been difficult on the project. But other than that, we've been working with staff, has been wonderful working with us for a couple of years on this project. And the owner's very excited, and hopefully we can see this project through. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. And
Good evening, board members. Agenda item 8B is for Delray Business Incubator at 905 Southwest 14th Avenue for a level 4 site plan. And here's the subject property. It's zoned light industrial, and it's surrounded by light industrial to the west and the south, and medium residential to the east and to the north. Just directly to the east across Southwest 13th Avenue is Island Cove. It's a fairly newly built residential housing, and to the north is also residential housing. There are 2 existing duplexes directly south to the subject property, but it is zoned light industrial. And directly to the west of the subject property is existing warehouse facility. And it has a land use designation of industrial. It is within the West Atlantic Redevelopment Master Plan, and the property size is 2.54 acres, and the proposal is a 20,216 foot warehouse and office. So a little bit background. Here we have an aerial shot of the subject property. There is an existing 2-story warehouse and office building for the rapid response. And back in 1959 is the first indication of platting for this area that was replatted, and it was replatted again. And in the 90s, 91 particularly, a 1-story warehouse was constructed. And then following that in 2015, a Class 1 modification to add a black decorative metal fence around the property was approved. And then in 2020, a Class 1 modification to add a office at the top of the existing building was approved. And so this is what we have today. And so the existing building is shown on the southern portion of the property, with the other northern portion at an existing state with gravel, essentially. There's nothing there right now, and it's surrounded by a black decorative metal fence. And so here are the existing conditions. As you can see, the rapid response is to the left, with a metal corrugated warehouse design with the overhead doors as mentioned, and with the blue at the top bordering the warehouse with a gray color base building. And then we have to the right of that is the black decorative metal fence, and I will highlight why I keep mentioning that fence. But it is surrounding the entire property. As you can see, this is the northeast corner view looking south. As you can see, the rapid response is just behind that, and it's vacant. So here is another shot of the existing conditions. Here's a view of Southwest 13th Ave looking south. The existing Island Cove residential is to the left, and then to the right is the subject property. And the photo to the right is a street view on the boots on the ground, essentially the fence. And this black decorative fence right now, it was approved on the property line. And there are portions that kind of cave in and create an alcove for future driveway openings for the future development. And so part of the proposal is to actually keep the existing fence as is, except for those portions that create this alcove, and bring that portion of the fence to align with the existing fence. And the reason I bring that up is that, and I will bring up the reason why in a later reason for that. And so the request encompasses a 1-story warehouse and office building that include 10 tenant bays, parking, on-site generator, a bus shelter, and stormwater retention. It also includes 1 variance for the minimum non-vehicular open space, and 3 waivers. 1 is for the overhead doors facing the right-of-way. The second waiver is for the minimum required 4,000 square feet for tenant bays. And the third waiver is for the minimum required 5-foot landscape strip between a parking area and the right-of-way. So here we have the site plan. Part of the request also required a 5-foot right-of-way dedication along Southwest 13th Avenue. As part of that dedication, the property line essentially shifts, and that creates a nonconformity to the location of the fence. Essentially, a fence is not required in the right-of-way, and requires a 2-foot setback. And so and the purpose of the right-of-way dedication is for any future improvements to the area, such as expansion of sidewalks or landscape area. And so with the due to the circumstances and the unforeseen improvements of the area, there is an agreement that was made with the city and the applicant to allow the fence within the right-of-way agreement until such improvements are made. And the agreement has not been executed, but it is part of the application package per se, and it will be part of the level 4 site plan application when it moves to city commission. Essentially, the reason is because the fence, the way it is, everything would have to be pushed out of the way. So the fence would have to essentially be eliminated, and it would just create a shift in the site plan and redesign. Okay, so here is a summary of, oh, and I wanted to go back really quick. Part of the site plan is the generator. The generator is in between the two buildings right now. So the generator is closer to the existing building, and then there's also a retention area at the northern portion of the property. Just wanted to highlight that for you. Okay, so here's a summary of the requested relief to give an overview for all of the requests for you. So the variance is for the non-vehicular open space. The green area essentially highlights what's considered non-vehicular open space. It's anything that's vegetated, anything that can grow from the ground. That's considered non-vehicular open space, and 25% is required, a minimum. And waiver number 1 is the base size. A minimum requirement is 4,000 square feet, and so the applicant is requesting to be below the minimum 4,000 to create the smaller tenant incubator spaces, startup businesses. And then waiver number 2 is for the overhead doors. The current regulation actually prohibits overhead doors from facing the right-of-way unless, yes. And then waiver number 3 is a minimum 5-foot landscape strip between the parking space and the right-of-way. And I wanted to highlight a little bit into that. The existing building, as you can see, has existing parking spaces, and those spaces just along Southwest 14th Avenue, due to the right-of-way dedication, that property line shifts and essentially reduces that landscape, 5-foot landscape buffer down to 3.3 feet and 3 inches. So I just wanted to highlight that because due to the application being submitted, it's triggering this 5-foot right-of-way dedication, eliminating or essentially moving that property line and creating nonconformity. So the applicant submitted a waiver to the landscape strip requirement. So here we go into the requested variance. Again, it's the not 25% non-vehicular open space. They're requesting a reduction of 1.1%. And here are the variance findings. So part of the variance request is that the granting body shall make positive findings to the criteria set forth. And the criterias are there's something special or something peculiar about the property that creates a hardship for the applicant to be able to continue with the proposal. There's also a little interpretation of the zoning regulations that deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. And the other criterias are essentially that it would not create a special privilege, or it's not self-inflicted, and that it would create harmony and not be injurious to the public welfare. So positive findings shall be made for the variance to these criterias before the board. And we have waiver number 1. This is for the overhead doors. So overhead doors shall not face the adjacent right-of-ways except when it is clearly demonstrated that no opportunity exists. And so here we have the elevations, the west and the east. The west will face the industrial to the west, and then the east will face the Island Cove residential. And these are, they're approximately, no, they are 6 overhead doors on each side, so 12 total. And here we have waiver number 2 to the minimum tenant bay size of 4,000. So the 2 end tenant bays are at 3,038 square feet. Essentially, they each have 2 overhead doors you can drive through and in and out. And then the other bays, it's at the smallest one is 1,519, highlighted in red, and then the 4 middle are 2,016 square feet. So that is the layout of the tenant bays. And waiver number 3 is the landscape strip of 5 feet required between the right-of-way and the parking spaces. And so these are existing parking spaces. As you can see, the right-of-way dedication highlighted in yellow essentially shifts that property line and reduces that landscape strip to 3 feet 3 inches. And with the existing parking space with a 16 by 9, it actually has a 2-foot overhang into that landscape strip. So we don't count that overhang into the requirement of the 5-foot requirement. So it actually shrinks it down to essentially a 1-foot landscape buffer. And so the request is for a 0-foot landscape strip to take into account. 1 foot is pretty small, so we're asking the applicant is requesting a 0-foot landscape strip. And here are the waiver findings. There are 4 criteria that would have to make a positive finding, and those are: shall not adversely affect the neighboring area, shall not diminish the provision of public facilities, not create an unsafe situation, or not result in the grant of a special privilege. And then I get into the site plan and the required findings for land use and concurrency. And so the land use is industrial with a zoning of light industrial, and those are compatible, and the uses are allowed in the light industrial area with a maximum floor area ratio of 0.60. The proposal is 0.307. The concurrency for potable water, drainage, streets and traffic, and solid waste all meet. There are no concerns with those concurrency. And here we required consistencies with the land, with the comprehensive plan. I wanted to highlight that the subject property is within the wellfield protection zone, so there are 2 policies that were found that we need to continue compliance with the county wellfield protection ordinance by having performance standards to have specific findings and upon approval of a site plan. So I will further discuss that, as well as the continuation and the expansion of industrial land uses within the area. So that is a policy that the city would like to see, as well as the FAR, which I briefly spoke about. And so here are the standards for site plan action. It really gets into the building design, lighting, open space, connectivity, and things like that. Overall, it is compliance with those criterias. However, there is a waiver to the open space. And again, there are no concerns with any of the criterias, and positive findings have been made. So here we get into the wellfield protection zone. So properties that are located within the wellfield protection zone and a site plan is upon review, the city shall require the applicant to file an affidavit of notification signed by the county of environmental resources management. And so the applicant has provided such documentation via email and has contacted the county to ensure compliance with that requirement. And as well as the other requirement is that a staff report shall be provided to the proven body and shall contain information to any potential regulated substances and the manner in which compliance with the applicable provisions of the ordinance of the county shall be achieved. So, a quick overview. There are 4 wellfield protection zones. This property is within 4 of them. And the zone 1 is the most restrictive, and then it gets and then into 2, 3, and 4 it gets less restrictive. And in zone 1 is where the well field is. It's actually across the street on Southwest H Street. And so it's located in all 4. However, the building itself is only contained to zone 2, 3, and 2 and 3. And so there are certain regulations that the county looks for when it comes to development into the well field, and those are that the drainage system shall be prohibited within zone 1 and 2, and any future businesses that are occupying in that area shall have regulated substances that meet the ordinance of the county. And so with the exfiltration system, it's actually in zone 3, so they are in compliance with that regulation. And then the applicant has stated that any future businesses there are not storing any substances on the premises, so they should be in compliance with that regulation. And so there are no concerns with this development within the wellfield protection zone at this time. Quickly into the compliance with the LDRs. Again, this is all in compliance with the LDRs except for the open space requirement, and the setbacks, height, everything meets except for the right-of-way fence. And off-street parking, 54 spaces are required, 74 are proposed. And a note that all commercial industrial uses shall be conducted entirely within the enclosed building. And then compliance with generators. So all on-site generators shall comply with setback requirements and screening closures. So the screening closure is proposed to have a concrete wall matching the existing building. And here we have the landscape plan. The retention areas to the north. It has a lot of existing oaks, so those are to remain, and the rest is a lot of trees, hedges, and ground cover to fill in the landscaping. And here are the requirements for architectural elevations. There's compatibility and with the existing and surrounding uses. And so there is compatibility in the colors and the structure of the building, and the area is the proposed building is fairly compatible with the surrounding areas for the industrial. Here are the elevations again for the west and the north.
I think you're wrapping it up, but we are okay.
Yes, and then here are the board actions. We have 4 actions for you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. At this point, I think we want to ask for public comment.
This is so strange being on this side. Wow. I don't know if I can get used to this. Hello, Mr. Snyder. So nice
Hello,
to see you.
Morrison.
Mr.
How are you?
Potts, hello. I'm good. Thank you so much.
I knew you'd be speaking on when I saw
I
you here
know.
from this item near 10th Street.
Of course. This is my neighborhood. Are you kidding?
And-
Over a decade.
Sorry, Ms.
Christina Morrison.
I think you came in just a little bit late. Have you been sworn in?
Oh,
Probably not.
Diane, would you swear her in, please?
Isn't this strange?
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Nice to see you too. Thank you. My name is Christina Morrison. I'm a commercial realtor. I live at 1000 Lowry Street in beautiful downtown Delray Beach. This property is being built in the middle of my neighborhood where I do most of my business. So just a little bit of history. We've been working with the property owners across 10th Street for over a decade to beautify this whole neighborhood, Park 10 Business Park. And they've gone to great lengths to really step up this neighborhood. In addition to that, the city has helped us by putting in multimodal paved areas for children to ride their bikes and walk, and the baby carriages with the moms, and it's really turning out beautifully. So thank you to the city, and thank you to my generous owners of the property across the street. This project is very needed. We have a lack of light industrial space in this city, especially small space like this. There's just nowhere for people to move when they've outgrown their spare bedroom or their garage and they have to move to a location. There's very little space available. So this is very, very needed. Just a few comments. The Housing Authority went to great lengths and took several years to build Island Cove, which is just to the east of this project. It is beautiful, and it has really stepped up that area. So I would just ask for your grace in making the developer provide either gross landscaping along the east side, that would be Southwest 13th Avenue, maybe limit the number of overhead doors on that side, because that's a beautiful new residential area to the east. So maybe limit overhead doors on that side, put them all in the west. The west is all industrial, heavy stuff, and the west side is where the overhead doors belong. But the east side has really stepped up, and maybe we could limit. More landscaping. Please consider insisting on a fence around the retention basin, because there's dozens of children now in this neighborhood playing, and I'd be a little afraid if that retention basin were not all fenced. So I think that's it. Thank you so much. This project's really needed, and I hope you approve it with these few changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one, does the applicant or the city have any rebuttal or cross-examination?
Not this time.
No?
No.
All right, board comments. Mr. Mieselman.
No, I don't have any comments.
Mr. Katz.
Sure. First of all, I agree with Ms. Morrison. It's definitely a needed area. Everybody seems to be starting a business in their garage or their home, and it's a great opportunity for that. I have very similar concerns to what Ms. Morrison brought, because I'm looking at I didn't get a chance to go over there, but I'm familiar with Island Cove, and that definitely, it's even right now where the current warehouse is, there's not a great view. So, yeah, if there could be any type of improvement on, landscape, whether it be some trees or something, because if you look, I mean, there's windows, bedroom windows, basically going to be facing this project. It is, it's the right use for it because it's light industrial and we don't have enough of it. I agree 100%. So, would I've loved this to be in the comprehensive plan as transitional and, some retail and some, like a great, for all those kids there, this would have been a great spot for that candy, land, whatever that, the one we just heard. There's so many kids in that area and there is really nothing, around, but we don't have enough industrial space. And I think that's why it's still zoned that. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely in favor of the project overall. It sounds like this waiver, I'm not a big fan of waivers at all, but it's like my question on that is that 5 feet that if they didn't have to give up that 5 feet, they would have met the requirement, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's kind of a waiver. It's definitely on that edge of whether or not you're really giving a lot away. And there was a question about the retention and the fence around that. Can somebody answer that? I think that's a valid question.
Yes, John Tice, the entire property is with the decorative iron fence, especially the retention.
So the retention would be covered. Yeah, there's literally right across the street a basketball court you see on the Google Maps kids playing. But yeah, I think, like I said, I'm not crazy about. I'd love to see something else there, but that's what it's zoned for, and that's what we need. So.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Donis.
I like the project. I have a question about the parking. You said that there's not going to be any landscaping, because the concern for me in this area is to maintain, especially so close to residential, to maintain the beauty that we've really worked hard on getting trees and landscaping. So if, pardon me, that waiver to take away the landscaping there, is there any replacements just sort of elsewhere, somewhere on the property to enhance? Just because I have a little concern with taking away some landscaping so close to a parking lot.
I believe we actually are hedging, but I think we're hedging on the other side of the fence. Let me check my landscape plan. So it's not zero landscaping, it's just not 5 feet.
But is the waiver for 0?
The waivers for the, because we don't meet the green area, but we have green area now that's outside of our property due to the right-of-way giving. Look at the landscape. Do we show the hedge there? Can we zoom? I don't know if we can zoom.
Yeah, but if the green area is not on your property.
So there's, Alexia can explain this in detail. So we struggled with how to characterize this. So there's certain perimeter landscape requirements that they're requesting a waiver for, but there's others that are still being provided. So I think Alexia can detail that out.
Yes. So there are existing trees right now that are actually located within the right-of-way that once the right-of-way dedication is approved, there's still going to be the landscape strip there that's existing with the trees. It's just the waiver is for the reduction of the landscape strip. Your question was about the landscaping itself. There are hedges being proposed along there. It's just going to be very it's not going to be on their property, essentially. It's going to be outside of the property line, because the landscape strip is going to be 3 feet 3 inches. And maybe, John, you can add in as to what exactly landscape is going to be in there.
Can you, I don't know if you can go to the landscape plan or zoom in. I don't know if you can zoom. Yeah,
But there is a required hedge required along there with
Okay.
trees.
I just want to make sure that it's.
Right in this area here, you can see this is the little area where we got squeezed. So, but we aren't putting the hedge. It's a continuous hedge, and this is all these are new trees to go in with the existing trees. So we're really beefing this up. In the area where we had open land, we exceeded the code. We had extra landscaping, hedge all the way through. Understory trees, palm trees, so we dressed it up pretty nice.
Great, thank you. And then my next question would be the permitting process for the companies that come in for these bays. Would that be something that they come to us for, or is that, or is it under a permit for this building itself?
You mean the environmental aspect?
So, Rafiq Ibrahim, Principal Current Planning. Every tenant will be required to approach zoning to get approval on the zoning certificate of use. After the build out, you do shell and core, so any new improvement will be through the building permit after the original building permit. So yes, they will approach us for the zoning certificate of use.
Perfect. And then as far as the overhead doors, are they on both sides? Can you show me that again? Is there any way we can move that on? Is it because they want to pass through? Why is there overhead doors
There
on both
are
sides?
businesses across both sides because of the small bay size that the applicant choose to do because of the type of marketing that they conducted and the type of business they wanted actually. And actually, there is something to be added here on the agenda today, which Rebecca will clarify. Item 9A will be actually a land development amendment concerning this specific area in the code, which is the overhead doors facing the right of way. So actually, you can continue discussion of this after this. So Rebecca has that.
Okay, and then can you pull up where the bays, the square footage for each bay is, please? It might have been on his proposal. Oh, there it is.
There,
So technically there's
10,
10? 10 places? Okay. I see now why they need it on both sides. Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say.
That's it? Mr. Strawn?
Yes, so I have the same concern that Mr. Katz and our public comment speaker had. Just as it relates to those 6 overhead doors facing the east. I mean, yeah, the east, that neighborhood there. It's just, to me, it's a bit unsightly to have open doors in front of my home. You know, if somebody's working in those bays. I agree with Mr. Katz. Maybe beef up the landscape there a little bit more. I see here on the north and the south end bays, the 3,000 square feet each. According to this, what you're saying, you're going to have overhead doors on both the east and west side of those 2 bays?
Yes.
Now, is there a way that we could, why is it necessary to have overhead on both sides if it's the same building?
Because there's a dividing wall down the middle, as you can see, so there are small units on each side. If we blocked one side, they wouldn't have access to an overhead door.
The big ones.
The big ones have on
the,
both.
the
yeah.
end bays, the 3,000.
Yeah. Oh, the end bays, yes, it could function. I mean, it's more practical. You know, being smaller bays, they're not the kind of bays where they're open and there's work going on. It's more of a inventory, open, close, in and out. It's not like a manufacturing facility where you
those overhead doors on the 2 bays on the north and the south end of the building are going to be pretty substantially sized doors, right?
They're 10 by 12, I believe, something like that.
Versus
12 by 12. They're all the same size.
They're all the same.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's a lot of doors facing a residential area. I mean, if we could, I can understand why you would need the 4 for those the inside bays, but to add an additional door to those, the north and south, when we're already, you know, you're asking for a waiver to pretty much do what the LDRs don't want you to do, which is have open overhead doors facing the right of way, which happens to have a residential area in the across the street from it. It's just, to me, that seems to be a lot. I would like to, if at the very least, subtract those 2 doors on the north and the south end of the bays. But that's just me, and I know we're going to address this later on. I saw that in my reading here, so I don't know how we reconcile the both, but to me, it just seems like a lot for those people that are living across the street. If we can do something to maybe hide those doors a little bit more, taller trees, taller hedges, I don't know. But
I think it's important to note that the shade trees, when they're mature, they're at a height that's very similar to those doors. So that could be something that mitigates that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Malika?
I think I have the same objection that Christina and the rest of many of the other board members, and that is, like, I don't care if the open doors are on the west side where that big public storage is, but facing the new beautiful building, if we're not hiding them, I don't like them on both sides. I mean, okay with all of the other, things that we have to think about giving variances for, but I have a difficult time with that. It's just like we're forcing, maybe it's just unloading boxes. It doesn't matter. It's a big garage door that these people have to look at in their brand new beautiful place. And the decorative black fence isn't going to hide it.
Can I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Just so, and I'm looking at the street view of what's there, and it does make sense where you have the fence, where you have mature trees, it's blocking it. But then I'm guessing that 1, 2, 3 are going to be the opening, the ingress and egress, correct? Am I right? Like on the bottom?
Yeah, the doors are shown.
No, I'm talking about on the property line.
The gates.
The gates, right? So the gates, those you're not going to have.
Driveways.
You're not going those driveways. You're not going to have any hedge. You're not going to have any trees blocking those.
Correct.
Those bay doors there.
Correct. Which there's one. Could you go to the site plan? So yeah,
Right, so if the entrances were more where the bays weren't, that would help because you would, and that'd be redesigning your whole project almost. But you know what I mean? If you were having the driveway face a regular door, where the bays aren't, I think that would help. Does that make sense? Am I?
See what you're saying?
Because this way, everywhere else, so you get this. I'm looking at the picture, where the older building is, the mature trees, where there's no driveway, it does block it pretty well.
Was the bottom the west side or the east side?
The bottom is the
Bottom's
east
the east
side.
side.
East for the,
Okay.
What
the old
is there?
building.
I know I'm jumping under Mr. Katz this time, but
Oh, I'm good.
how about there are 3 parking spaces to the north of the entrance? How about putting the entrance there and putting the 3 parking spaces over where the entrance is?
I don't know if that gets the entrance too close to the corner by traffic engineering.
Oh.
That could be an issue.
Yeah. I don't either. Because I agree 100% that well, I want to talk about the landscaping and the doors facing, but just while we're on this, that the entranceway should not be where you're looking at a door, because it's not going to be covered.
Yep.
Just checking with the owner, there's a possibility we could entertain closing a couple of doors that might help,
What?
or getting rid of a couple of doors
Oh,
facing on the east side
the 2 on
only.
either end.
Maybe the either end ones, which are easier. That's the low
That
hanging
would be.
fruit. That would be
I
helpful.
think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
You know, also, I think, you know, it might add to your cost, but there are certainly commercial oversized French doors. You know.
Well,
There are very nice
I
doors,
wanna-
like fire station
There are.
doors are beautiful, actually.
Yeah. In my comment, one of the things that I didn't particularly like, if you could put up the east elevation, somebody. Back one. Why do they have to be that horrible contrasting brown color? Why can't they blend in with the facade of the building?
We wanted the building to have a little bit different identity, using similar blue to tie it together, but the gray was particular to the other business.
I just think that I don't know if are the doors going to be mostly open or mostly closed?
Mostly closed for these smaller
So
businesses.
if the
yeah.
doors are mostly closed, then they need to look nicer than that, in my opinion. That maybe it's because of the picture, but I think when I look at that, it says, "Look, I'm in a big overhead door."
The doors could get a little less tall as well.
And
Please.
The
I
doors
think-
could get less tall. They're
Okay.
tall, and maybe they don't need to be that tall. Maybe that would help.
that would help as well.
Yeah.
But I think Ms. Brandon has something to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think instead of, going into getting close to designing from the dais, you wanna, if you guys can make recommendations, if you're going to make recommendations, if you make them in, ways that
General.
they could do it so that it would not adversely affect the neighboring area, shall not significantly diminish the provision of public facilities, shall not create an unsafe situation. So if there's a way that they can minimize those
Okay.
findings for your waiver, then, then you can
Okay.
recommend them. So I
right.
don't think you're out of your purview talking about how many doors there are, things like that, but just framing it in the way of how it will make it meet the waiver criteria as opposed
All
to,
right.
and then the architect can make their own decisions as far as like what the door changes or whatever it might be.
So we
That
approved-
sounds excellent.
we approved all the other waivers, but not this one until they amended it. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
You can, I wouldn't recommend just doing a partial. I would recommend if you guys are leaning toward the way of,
With the recommendation.
Redesign?
making a recommendation with I would probably recommend, would you agree recommend continuing with direction so that, you could make some of those, we don't think that this is probably going to meet that waiver finding of shall not adversely affect the neighboring area, but you guys have kind of laid out some ways that they may be able to reduce the door openings, or maybe they're changing the color, or maybe they're doing the French doors, whatever the architect decides that would minimize the way that it's affecting the neighboring area. So you could kind of just give direction and postpone to a future date with that kind of direction.
Thank you.
As long as that's acceptable to the applicant, that, if they're leaning towards, denying that waiver without, if you would prefer that they go ahead and postpone with direction. The other option is, they can make their decision today, and then, you have the ability to, just bring it to the, is it an appeal, or do they just bring it to the commission as a denial?
It has to come to the commission for final appeal. So if you felt comfortable with staff working with them on certain directions, you could just say, we would like to see changes for this type of impact, and we feel comfortable with, after those being made, taking it to commission. But I think Kelly is right that it's better to treat it as a continuance, and then, or continue with further direction, and that way they can work and take their time to adjust as needed to address these concerns.
So are you saying to come back before us, or to turn it over to staff and then have it go to the city commission? You're confusing me a little.
Sorry. I think while that is technically an option, I think it's probably better to continue if you have serious concerns, given the number of ways that they could go in redesigning it. I don't know that staff would want to bear the responsibility of not letting you guys view it again.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry, for the records,
Yeah.
I just would like to make a clarification. This is a level 4 site plan application, and the PZB is actually providing a recommendation, and the final action is by the city commission.
Yes.
So, thank you.
So before we work the details out of that, I just have one other thing I want to ask about. The 23.9% green space, to use a word that I can remember, is a variance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why isn't it a waiver? I'm not inclined to give a variance if I can give a waiver.
I can answer that. The simplest way is to explain it is that the section of the non-vehicular open space is in 4.34K, and basically anything that's referenced into 434K is a variance and not a waiver.
Okay, because my concern is if a variance is granted and 10 years from now the property is sold and developed in an entirely new way, does that variance then continue with the property?
I believe the redevelopment would have to conform with all requirements.
So we're, by granting a variance, we're not basically grandfathering anything in for in the future.
A variance will move with the land, so it actually does stay on the property.
So if we give it a variance,
but I think you're talking about if they demolish the whole building, then they might, be.
I mean, somebody else did something else with the property, and they're going to go, well, we only have to put in 23.9% of non-vehicular open space because it's been granted a variance 10 years ago.
Sorry, just a clarification. If the conditions that was associated with granting the variance are changed in the future, so the variance does not exist. Let's say if they demolish this,
right,
and then they will come to redevelop, there's no
so
variance here.
the variance is
variance,
with the building, basically.
Yes,
okay,
with the conditions of approval.
Okay. All right, that's inadequate. Okay, thank you. Do we want to?
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, but you can ask all the questions you want.
Just a question about the hedging. So the hedging, first of all, is going to be on the other side of the fence, on the outside the fence, in the right of way, or who's maintaining it? Number one's question.
Our owners maintain only where it has to be because of the right of way. Everywhere else, it's within the property line.
But either way.
The owner,
it's-
our owner has to maintain.
has to maintain, and that's required. And then, I know we're not Sprout, so we can't see or judge the type of hedges, but I will say, if it was, we can? I don't know,
Yeah,
it's site plan.
it's a site plan. We're
Okay,
reviewing the
all
site
right, all right,
plan.
we're both now, okay, I know
You
they
can
changed
talk
the
about
words.
all of it.
So my question is that there are certain, you say you're putting hedges, that's a big word, right? Do you know what type of hedges? Because I think, to me, I'd be a lot more inclined with hedges that grow really tall. Because that, again, will add another buffer there. So if you have tall hedges, you know, and then, because what's gonna happen is, if the hedges can come at least to the top of the fence eventually, you know, it takes a couple of years. And then, because when the trees mature, the canopy is gonna be higher. So if we can get the hedge up to meet almost the canopy, you're basically hiding the building, with the exception of those entrances they have the concerns with. And you have a really good project that fits with that beautiful neighborhood across the street.
Yeah, we have a combination of cocoa, plum, clusia hedge. Kim Moyer, our landscape architect, did provide us a hedging that could. I think getting the hedge up to the right height definitely does a lot. And the tree canopy, I can't overstate it. It really, and also it's very rare you'll be standing or driving and being exactly perpendicular to those doors at that driveway. You never see buildings that way. You always see them this way or as you're passing by. So it's not, you know, the elevation shot is not a true picture. So. And I would be in favor of, I would love to see some kind of a condition of approval that gets us towards an approval, not kicking it down to another. If we could work with staff to, because we would be more than willing to make some minor modifications in the design to address this concern with staff. That will do something, and it seems to. I'm hearing that there's a text amendment possibly coming that will eliminate the overhead doors facing right-of-ways. Which
No, it's
Oh,
going to
okay.
make it worse for you.
We want to do something.
Yeah.
It's
So
going to
you probably
say,
want it now.
it's going to say not facing residential.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You don't want to know about
I
it.
got you. Sorry, I brought that up. But no, we'd like to
So-
work with something with staff. But we've been at this a long time, and we really think we've got a good, sensitive project here.
They seem like they're really concerned about that neighborhood. I mean, and they're
We are.
improving
I
an
agree.
We really
area
are.
that we need to have and embrace buildings like this.
And Rebecca's correct. I mean, it is going to the city commission. So if there is, you know, if there are recommendations you want to make, if you want to put some type of conditions on it, you could go ahead and do that. And then Rebecca, if you feel comfortable with staff working with the applicant, I mean, typically I would still recommend a continuance with direction just because, you know, you might want to see what this big change looks like. I mean, these are big changes. You're asking for like architectural elevation changes. So generally that would want to come back to the board, but since it is commission final decision, you know, you guys can make the recommendations and it be brought forward with the presentation when they bring it up to commission that, you know, you had these specific conditions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we do a continuation and then 9A is approved, we'll never discuss this again. 'Cause you're
No,
not
no,
able
no.
to put it. Is that accurate?
Right. So your continuation wouldn't be an approval. It would be a continuation with direction. That will come back to you.
I see.
If you approve it now with conditions, that will not come back to you. It'll go to the commission.
So,
I think your question was, they're not grandfathered in, they're already, this application was submitted before the change, so they would be under the old rules.
yeah, yeah.
When if we change the rules at 9A, they're not gonna be affected no matter what for that, because the application was in before.
May I make?
Right.
Well, no, we're voting on a waiver, and that waiver will not be possible if 9A is approved.
Well, yeah, well,
If
Really?
I can
Well, you can
clarify,
waive that.
yeah. So if I can clarify, so 9A is giving more strict standards. So let's say if that was approved, they would still be able to come in and ask for that waiver anyway,
I see.
and you
Okay.
would have those same waiver findings. Now it's just a little more vague, like, well, is it not possible to do it any other way? So like,
Right.
I think either way they would still have this path
So
to
we
ask
could
for a
make
waiver. So it's not necessarily
So we
relevant
could
to
make
what.
an approval with conditions that the 3,000 square foot doors on either side, on the east side, right?
East, yeah.
Didn't happen, and then shorter doors?
well,
Plus landscaping?
I think Ms. Brandon's point was we should not be telling them how to design their building.
I understand.
We should tell them that we want
Do you want to give?
the amelioration of the
effect
Just-
on the neighboring area.
yeah, effects on the neighborhood, and that they should, let me change the subject just momentarily, and then we'll get back to this. Why is the minimum bay size 4,000 feet? What is wrong with having smaller bays?
Okay. I believe I can answer this question. So, so with the wellfield protection zone, it's the wellfield protection zone is to protect our water supply, correct? Well, the way where it's located is in the industrial zoning district.
Right.
So back in the 90s, I believe the CRA, maybe the city, wanted to rezone the area to medium residential to allow medium residential in this area.
I'm asking about
yes,
the
I'm
bay
getting to
sizes.
that. Yeah, so I'm getting to that. But then they realized because to protect the water supply.
Right.
But the County of Environmental Resource Management changed and created an ordinance essentially to allow industrial areas within a wellfield protection zone with special regulations to restrict substance, toxic substances and stuff like that. So the city reverted back to industrial or light industrial to allow the expansion and the continuation of light industrial uses in the area subject to LDR regulations, and these LDR regulations are the overhead doors, the minimum size 4,000, and I'm assuming to allow more space is to restrict the amount of businesses.
And it was a little difficult tracking through the staff reports for when those regulations
Yes,
were
talk
adopted.
about cleanliness.
Yeah, so it was something related
Correct.
to the bay sizes, being able to control the types of businesses that went in there, with the idea being that if they were that the bay sizes could control the potentially toxic elements, and I think it's found that there's other things in place to keep those from impacting.
Okay. Because I don't see them as a big deal. I just wonder why we care. Okay. What I would like to do is get some kind of consensus of the board on whether we want to make an approval with conditions or what was the other term? Continuation. And is it just up to us to say so?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, before, could we just add one more? The
Yeah.
owner just asked me to remind that he's very willing to mandate the hedges are taller to a certain height. We also have the tree canopy, and lowering the doors, and even changing the color of the doors to blend in with the building if there's a concern. We would do that as a condition of approval with no issues, to try to mitigate that, instead of have to come back again, because we've been at this 3 years. And we really want to build. The owner really wants to build this project.
So I don't know that we could be anything specific enough as change from tan to blue, but you could say, look at a more visually appealing door color, increase the landscaping, and assess the configuration of the site and the building to provide additional visual screening. And that would be, I think, clear enough.
I know, Diane, did you get that?
If that's your direction, somebody could say.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Well, is that what we want to do? Well, yeah, make a motion, but you have to say all that stuff.
I make a motion. I move to recommend to the city commission approval of a level 4 site plan application including architectural elevations and landscape plan to construct 20,216 square feet warehouse and office building, along with one variance to the required 25% non-vehicular open space and 3 waivers for bay size, overhead doors in the 5-foot perimeter, landscape strip located at 905 Southwest 14th Avenue, finding that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criterion of the land development regulations, subject to conditions that changes are made to the aesthetics that will appeal to the neighborhood on the east side of the project, with hedges that will grow to mature to go above the fence line, and more trees, potentially more trees, or not more trees, you already have the mature trees in there. Leave that out. But aligning the entrances to less impact and visibility of the by the residents of these bay doors, and then the bay doors on the east side being shorter or different type of doors allowed. Either way, that would be more appealing to the neighborhood that is looking at it aesthetically. Did I get everything?
Can you say that again?
No. Did I get everything?
I would second that.
All right. Ms. Miller, we have a motion by Mr. Katz, seconded by Ms. Malika. If you could call a roll, please.
Mitch Katz,
Yes.
Chris Brown is absent, Deidre Strong,
Yes.
Allison Thomas,
Yes.
Jeffrey Meiselman,
Yes.
Judy Malika,
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much.
time and effort.
We appreciate
And
your
good
time.
luck to the owners.
And
the
you'll be proud of us.
It was not an easy one.
Thank you.
Okay, now we gotta change the rules so they can't do it.
It's sad that they couldn't have put more house. They apparently one time wanted to put more housing there because that would have.
Well, that would have been nice, yeah.
Also, I think it would have been a good potential transition.
This is still gonna go ahead to the commission, so let's keep comments limited, please. Thank you. And we can go on to the next.
All right. Having finished that, we can move on to legislative items. Ms. Dossery?
Yes, good evening. Okay, for the record, my name is Rebecca Dossery, entering into the record file number 2025-103. So this is an amendment, it is triggered by requests like the one we had tonight. We're recommending, modified regulations within the MIC zoning district, the industrial zoning district, and light industrial zoning district. So the reason we're asking for this is because the waiver that you saw tonight is the fourth waiver that we processed since 2017. So at that point, it starts to make staff ask if maybe our regulations are not calibrated correctly. So the three prior to the one you saw tonight were all granted. We're essentially in each LDR section, there's slightly different regulations. Some prohibit it on an arterial, some prohibit it on collectors, and then light industrial, as you saw tonight, says when it's clearly demonstrated that no opportunity exists to do otherwise. And that's a little vague. So we wanted to make it a cleaner process, and I'll go into why we are recommending what we are. We would, they could not face a minor arterial, residential zoning district, or a residential use. The roadway classifications are alluded to in here. So principal arterials are anything like I-95, whereas minor arterials are like Lincoln Boulevard. And then collectors are different things like Wilson Boulevard. And on this map of our industrial zoning compared to the roadway classifications, you can see that there's a lot of things that make it really challenging for any industrial use to not face a local or collector. And so since we posted the agenda, we actually added language to prohibit it facing a minor arterial, because I think if the choice would be to have it face Congress Avenue versus I-95, we would prefer it to be facing I-95 in the overhead door. So again, we all, based on discussion tonight, saw that overhead doors would be potentially problematic next to a residential use. And
Rebecca, excuse me, is your mic on?
sorry about that. And then there's just so many local and collector roads that it's not necessarily feasible to do an across-the-board prohibition on overhead doors facing those, particularly because a lot of those industrial districts are very contained, and all the industrial properties. And then we would say it's not appropriate facing an arterial road. A lot of these roads like Congress Avenue, which is an industrial character road, those are where we have people coming by, and we want to preserve a nice view shed for those roads. Again, we're always trying to streamline our LDRs where development trends change, or just to make them more efficient and effective. And I think with the 4 waivers we've received for this, it indicates that something is not right with it. And again, just for preservation of vistas along corridors, we were being careful which corridors we were allowing the overhead doors to face. And we definitely want to support economic activity and industrial activities, and so making it a little easier for some of these businesses to operate without having to get that waiver, we thought would be a good change to attempt to make. We are hoping to bring this to commission in March, and at this point we would appreciate any feedback that you all have on the proposed changes.
Okay. Comments, questions?
None.
Oh, we may need, do we have to do comments from the public, I think, before discussion?
We do, I guess. Is there any comments from the public? And there-
Christina's here, she's
maybe.
gonna talk.
Someone say something.
You know, my comment is that overhead doors in industrial areas shouldn't face residential properties. That's just, that's just not permitted. And this is an unusual property that it is next to what didn't used to be residential, but it is now. But still, that's not really nice. How would you like a big industrial door out your front door? I mean, that's a no-brainer. The others are very necessary, and we really don't have enough industrial areas in our city, so I'd hate to negatively impact anything in the heavy industrial or the industrial areas that are surrounded by light industrial areas. But in this case, a situation like this where they're facing residential, that just shouldn't be permitted. Thank you. Just my opinion.
This is a
My
different
question,
agenda.
maybe I'm off on my thinking, is that by making it, sorry, go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done.
Okay. Now go ahead.
Thank
There's
you,
nobody
sorry.
else involved up here.
By making it more specific, doesn't negate people from coming up and asking for a waiver anyway, correct?
So if we would be allowing it along local and collector roads, I neglected to put this on the slide. So on the example, I'm on the wrong. So on these examples here, for example, these were all along local roads. There's one that was along a local and a collector. So
so it wouldn't have come up had
so
it
it
we
wouldn't
been
have
more
come
specific.
up. Yes, and none of these are facing residential. Well, it looks like that one might be facing a residential use, but either way, it gives if it gives more specifics to allow it in certain circumstances that would be more likely to come up that are a no-brainer, but then still offers the opportunity for a waiver if someone was wanting to face a residential use.
Right. And while I agree with Ms. Morrison and some of the things our colleagues have said over time, and I also believe, and I'm not openly negative about waivers, I'm not openly positive about waivers, right? I mean, they exist for a reason, but I don't see a problem with it being that it's going to maybe eliminate or alleviate some situations or circumstances that might otherwise have been granted and sped up the permitting process. Is that fair to say?
I think that's the attempt. If you all have feedback on whether or not we've achieved that through what we're proposing, we certainly would appreciate that. But yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do.
It also took out the language that if there's no other option, that just went away, right?
Correct. So in
that's a good point.
Yeah. So in light industrial, where this previous item that you saw, we are proposing to strike that out and just to say it's not allowed on minor arterials next to residential. So this one would have still had to come because we are establishing the rule that it should not face residential, but we always have that relief process, which they were taking advantage
Which is
of.
exercise. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mr. Strong.
Oh, no comment.
Mr. Katz.
Just a question, and so first of all, I like the words "shall" instead of "may." That is always, because that helps future boards make decisions when it comes to a waiver. Because like what we just passed or recommended was under the word "may," So if, just curious, if this project we just saw, it takes them until April, say now, let's say this gets approved by the commission, by us and then the commission, and they don't get back to they don't get in front of the commission in May. Are they now under the shall or the may when they get to the commission?
I believe they're under the rules that they submitted under. So, and then, yeah, they're under the rules they submitted under.
That's what I thought. Just
Correct.
But may and shall still means that they can still ask for a waiver,
Right.
whether it be may or
But shall's very strong. It's to me like if they ask, if that was in effect now, I would be a lot more hesitant. To me, the word shall is a lot stronger than may when it comes to giving a video.
It says may not.
I still think we have to look at
It's
each.
shall not.
No.
It's going from may not to shall not.
Shall not. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
That's to me the measure of giving a waiver for somebody that may not. That's a lot more subjective word than shall. So I like the word. I like the wording of it. I applaud staff for making that stronger. It'll make it easier for future boards.
I think it was intended to mean shall originally. It's just being changed to make sure that it's clear now.
Very clear. Yeah.
But it's better writing.
I have a question on the overhead doors. Is the specific definition that the city looks at overhead doors as a roll-up door?
That's actually, I can check here.
Ooh, I don't know.
It's highly likely that we do not define it. So, that would be a surprise to no one if it wasn't defined. Let's see. So I don't think we define it. We could always add a definition to clarify that it's with a commercial or an industrial use, and not trying to think like I believe like at Delray Market they have some roll-up doors which are more ornamental and just allow you. So it wouldn't be that kind of door. I think you're saying you would only like to see this regulation related to something like an industrial type, not a.
I would, because I have firsthand experience moving things in and out of like large spaces, and you really need a large door, and you're going to impede certain businesses by not having the ability to have that opening. And they do really have some very nice commercial like French doors, and they have glass in them, and they're ornate. They're clearly expensive, but I think that it probably makes sense to give a developer that opportunity as opposed to just say no overhead doors, whatever that means.
We'll look at a definition of that.
But the relief would be a variance.
It is, and this is only applicable within these 3 industrial type zoning districts as well. But the relief path would be a waiver.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean you're talking about oversized doors, really.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, overhead, but oversized doors is really what.
The overhead and oversized, I mean, that's I guess that's in the definition.
Well, no, I mean, if you're talking about moving things out of a business, the market has roll-up doors. They're not 20 feet tall.
But an overhead typically comes up over you, where a French door opens.
Yeah. But and as is written, that no rules apply to the French door.
I don't think most people going into a business like that are thinking anything other than an overhead door.
Of course.
So I think it makes sense to give that opportunity to them.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying, I think the intent of the ordinance or the LDR is large commercial doors, not just because it rolls up, but because it's big and it can be an eyesore. How that works. I get confused about the roads.
About the what?
Roads.
I can go back to the.
Because I can't read the small print and I can't see that very well.
Yeah.
So this says, so your LDR is written in all 3 cases says, shall not face an adjacent arterial right of way. Okay. So is Linton arterial?
Linton is a minor arterial. So
Okay.
Subsequent to the agenda posting, we added that additional clarifier for minor arterials so that it could face a road like I-95, which I-95 is our only other principal arterial, but on minor arterials like Linton or Congress, that's where the prohibition would come in.
So all of the basically main roads in Delray Beach are minor arterial, except
Correct.
for 95.
So,
but it can face local and collectors.
correct.
Okay.
And I think we played with which level of restriction would be the most appropriate. And so there are actually a lot of collector roads in the city of Delray. So essentially, all of the dark green that you see on the map are collector roads, but of collector roads that are adjacent to industrial, there weren't that many, and it was, we thought it was maybe a good path to start with and
Okay.
bring for discussion.
I mean, I like this because it's short and it says what it means to say. And as Mr. Katz said, I think shall is a good part of it. Do we have a motion? Do we need a motion?
We do need a motion. I shall recommend approval to the city commission on ordinance number 9-25, a city-initiated amendment to section 4.4.19, mixed industrial and commercial MIC district, section 4.4.20, industrial district, section 4.4.26, light industrial district of the land development regulation to amend regulations for overhead doors by finding that the amendment and the approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Malika, seconded by Mr. Katz.
Got that one.
Ms. Miller, if you can call the roll, please.
Mitch Katz,
Yes.
Chris Brown is absent, Deidre Strong,
Yes.
Allison Thomas.
Yes.
Jeffrey Meiselman.
Yes.
Judy Malika.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes. Okay. Now we can talk about building elements and setbacks.
And hopefully this will be a short one, since you all recently looked at the same issue, but I'll try to move through it as quickly as possible. Okay, so I'm reading into the record file number 2025-105. This amendment, we're looking for a recommendation on a few additional modifications to the things that can go in your building setbacks. Back in 2024, we did a complete overhaul of all the standards to add more objective standards and just new elements that hadn't been contemplated before. So this this ordinance is just making some minor modifications to improve the quality of interpretation, just as we've had different things coming up already where folks didn't feel like our regulations provided enough clarity. So for one, pergolas, we didn't specifically address those, which would be a small, more ornamental feature in a backyard. Setbacks for pools associated with duplexes. And then we needed to clean up the language for screen porches when they're not associated with a pool. So we've proposed a standard that if a pergola is detached and no more than 10 by 10 by 10, doesn't have a solid roof, then you could put it within 5 feet of the property line in the side interior or rear yard. And then we adopted regulations for pool setbacks for townhouses, but we inadvertently excluded duplexes. So it's applying the same regulations to duplexes as townhouses, and then specifying that that 5-foot setback is the interior line between units rather than outside of that development. And then for screen porches not associated with the pool, we made it a little clearer that a screen porch is subject to a different set of regulations than a screen enclosure associated with the pool, with the idea being that if you have a screen porch, someone could potentially, and they do all the time, solidify the walls and the roof, and then it would become something that it wasn't intended to be. So we were just tightening those up. And again, we're always trying to do better for our residents and development interests that are trying to interpret our regulations. So that's why we're bringing those forward. Again, we're hoping to get it to commission in March, and then those are your options for action, and I can take any questions you may have.
Oh, I'm going to, okay. When we're talking about the detached pergolas, you all are very specific, 10 by 10 by 10. So what happens with pergolas that don't meet the 10 by 10 by 10 dimensions?
Then you would have to move it back from the side setback. So rather, let's say if you had a 10-foot side yard setback, if it's on the smaller side, then it would be considered less obtrusive to your neighbors. But if it ended up being like 20 feet or you're starting to add a roof, then that's something that has to meet the building setbacks. Rather than that, if that size that we have in this draft is, you think, too large, we can look at making it smaller. We were thinking of just the open air structures that a lot of folks like to use in their backyards with
Right, okay.
No, I have no questions.
Is it that they're going to prohibit taking the 10 by 10 to make it a Four Seasons room, which in Florida is really a 2-season room, but you know what I mean?
One season, yeah.
Or one season sometime. This week, 2 seasons. Or does that mean they can just get special permitting, or is it no, never?
So if you were putting a roof and making it more solid, then it would have to meet the development standards for setbacks. Whereas, and if it was, whether attached or detached, it would have to meet the, if it was detached, it would have to meet the requirements for an accessory structure and the setbacks. So that, I mean, that was our thinking. We do have a lot of zero lot line developments that are now trying to do an enclosed porch or a screened-in porch, and then it becomes, well, are you putting on a roof? Because then it's not allowed. But if you are not roofing it, then we would let it. So it becomes very muddy, and it was.
Well, and I'm also thinking of maybe the houses with nice backyards doing it and thinking that at the time it's nice for the pergola, but then wanting to make it more of a solid structure. And I'm not an expert on this, but typically you pour a concrete pad, and to have somebody not be able to negate or to not be able to make it a permanent structure as opposed to a pergola, we might want to invite that to be very specific so that they're not having to break up concrete or thinking whether or not they were doing it intentionally or just later on. I would be maybe more specific on.
So you would be wanting to say without a concrete pad. I think you would, or does the concrete pad make a difference for your?
No, I just think that I don't want people to think that, I don't know how to word it. I don't want them to think that they have to not be able to put that as an enclosure had they gotten permitting to begin with.
Okay, we can look at how we word that.
Yeah.
Even if they want to make it more enclosed than if they want to make it more enclosed than the open pergola with the open roof, it's not allowed in the setback.
Oh.
See, that's the whole thing. This is only stuff that's in the what's allowed in the setback.
Okay, then never mind.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Katz.
I don't know.
Chip.
No comment.
Nor do I. So, what do you find people making a motion, please?
Recommend approval to the City Commission on ordinance number 10-25 on a city-initiated request to amend land development regulations, section 4.3.4, base district development standards, subsection H, setbacks, amending section 4.6.15, swimming pool, whirlpools, and spas, subsection G, yard encroachment to clarify regulations on building elements and site improvements allowed in building setbacks by finding that the amendment and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in land development regulations.
I second.
We have a motion by Ms. Thomas, seconded by Ms. Malika. If you'd call a roll, please, Ms. Miller.
Mitch Katz?
Yes.
Chris Brown is absent. Deirdre Strong?
Yes.
Allison Thomas?
Yes.
Jeffrey Musselman?
Yes.
Judy Malika?
Yes.
Gregory Snyder?
Yes. All right, thank you. That's all the business. Any staff comments tonight?
No comments.
No staff comments. Any attorney comments tonight?
No, I don't have anything.
Oh my gosh. Any board comments?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
when we have situations like we had with the light industrial case, and we're having 3 waivers and a variance, is there a way to break down the recommendations so that if we don't agree with one waiver, it could still move forward with the other two? Because it seems the recommendations that we're making are all inclusive.
Right.
We can work on how we word the motions, because I agree, like when you maybe agree with some but not all of them,
Right.
to give you the option to make those recommendations. So in our future staff reports, we'll work on making sure that they're split out.
Okay.
How do you mean?
And I think you could do that. The problem is this was a site plan and all of those things. So to deny the waiver for the overhead door would have denied, I mean, would have changed the entire, I mean, it would have changed the whole site plan for front elevation, you know, so it would have been difficult to split that one up. I'm not saying that it can't happen, right? Like there are times where you could certainly deny a waiver, but allow the project to move forward. I just think that one might have been very difficult to parse out. I mean, maybe if you had their, like, if we had a discussion with the applicant saying, you know, they do plan to move forward even if they have no doors on that elevation, you know. So I just think it might have been difficult to actually put the site plan forward without the waiver on that one. But certainly I think it would make sense to split it up for future so that you can, you know, deny certain things.
They used to come in front of I know at least the commission, each waiver had to be voted on separately. So the recommendations, I would assume, would be the same.
So there's certain waivers that it specifies in the LDR have to go to commission. So with this new, more holistic site plan approach where we bring it all together, you would just need to send them back to, or continue with further direction. I think we had a lot of complaints that just bringing the waivers separately caused a bit of a bifurcated review process. But then, as all of you were pointing out, there is some complication in trying to vote on a site plan where you might agree with part but not all of the relief requested. So we can continue to keep an eye on it as they're moving through the process to figure out if we need to adjust any further.
The way we did it felt sloppy, right, to me. But I didn't want to kick them out and say come back when we're happier about it. But it just didn't feel neat.
It was definitely a tough one.
I'm sorry?
It was definitely a tough one.
Yeah.
It was a difficult one to kind of, I mean, you can always continue with direction, or, you know, when it's going as a recommendation to commission, you could, you know, make those recommendations. If it was not going to the next level for a review and you guys, or if you guys wanted to see it again, you know, like then that would not be something that would normally not come back before you, because that is kind of a significant change on the building, architectural changes. So
Anybody else? I get to say this because Rebecca didn't. The next board meeting's on the 4th Monday.
It's on what?
It's funny, February 24th.
February 24th, right.
Yes, so mark your calendars for the 24th, and don't come the week before because we will not be here.
And what was that?
And don't come the week before because we'll be closed for President's Day,
Okay.
or
Terrific.
a holiday.
Okay.
President's Day. All right. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
thank
I wish I worked for a business that actually